When people are nearing the end, they are often burdened by regrets. Not when the diagnosis comes or when they stop walking on their own, but in those quiet final days, when the noise fades and the truth becomes impossible to avoid. That's when the real weight sets in. Not about what they did, but what they didn't. The missed chances, the sense, the moments they let slip by without realizing they were the last. In this video, you'll discover 9 of the most haunting regrets people face before the final transition. Real confessions from those who thought they had more time until they didn't. Let's begin with number 1, not saying "I love you" enough. Carla, 82, had been battling heart failure for years. In her final days, struggling to breathe and fading fast, she quietly told her nurse, "I hope they knew I loved them." She had never said it out loud, not even to her children, not once in decades. 2 days later, she passed peacefully, with that thought still lingering in the room like unfinished music. Hospice workers say this is one of the most repeated regrets they hear, not the dramatic ones, but the quiet ones. The words that stayed stuck in someone's throat for a lifetime. Words held back out of habit, pride, fear of awkwardness, or the simple belief that they already know. But as time runs out, that silence becomes unbearable. It doesn't feel noble or modest. It feels like a wound that can't be closed, because once the chance is gone, you never get it back. And "I love you" is the one phrase people wish they'd said more while they still had the chance. Number 2, not being there when it mattered. Paul, 69, had spent the last year battling stage 4 lung cancer. He built a successful business over decades, but rarely made it home for birthdays, bedtime stories, or weekend breakfasts. His calendar was full, his company thriving, but the living room stayed quiet, and the photo albums stopped filling. Sitting beside his adult son in hospice, voice weak but steady, he said, "I'd trade every deal I made for just one more Christmas morning with you kids." This kind of regret is especially common among men nearing the end, not because they didn't love their families, but because they thought providing was enough. They believed there would be time for vacations, dinners, and slow mornings, once life finally calmed down. But when time runs out, they see clearly what their families needed wasn't money, it was presence. And it's that absence, those missed ordinary moments, that lingers longest in their final days. Number 3, holding on to grudges that didn't matter. Elaine, 90, was in her final week of life after a long decline from kidney failure. She hadn't spoken to her sister in over 30 years, a disagreement that grew into silence, then decades of distance. When her daughter brought her a photo of her sister, Elaine looked at it for a long time. Her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "She probably thinks I hated her, but I never did." Hospice workers hear this more often than people think. Not the loud, dramatic regrets, but the quiet ones. The ones that sit in the corners of the heart for decades. By the time people realize their pride cost them years of connection, the chance to fix it has usually slipped away. And tragically, they can't even remember what the fight was really about. What remains is the silence and the unbearable weight of knowing that love was buried under years of stubbornness. Number 4, worrying too much about what others thought. Mark, 70, had been living with prostate cancer for 5 years. As it spread to his bones, the physical pain became constant, but something deeper bothered him more. He told his nephew, "I always wanted to speak my mind, to wear what I liked, to live the way I wanted, but I kept worrying what people would think." Mark had spent his entire life playing it safe. He never wore the bright shirts he loved. He stayed silent when he had something to say. He worked jobs that felt dull, just to maintain an image. Not because anyone told him to, but because he feared judgment more than unhappiness. Near the end, many people admit something powerful. They weren't living for themselves. They were living to avoid judgment. They followed rules, stayed quiet, and dimmed their own light just to fit in. And the haunting truth is this: most of the people they feared disappointing never even noticed. It was all in their head, and it cost them years of authenticity they'll never get back. Number 5, not speaking up when it mattered. Joanne, 76, was in decline after multiple strokes left her weak and partially disoriented. Years earlier, she'd quietly disagreed with their children's decisions about her husband's care, decisions that didn't align with what she believed he truly wanted. But she stayed silent. She didn't want to upset anyone. She didn't want to cause a fight. Near the end, she told a hospice nurse, "I should have spoken up. I think about it all the time." This kind of regret runs deeper than most, not because of something someone did, but because of what they failed to say. People often stay silent to keep the peace, to avoid tension, to keep harmony within the family. But when the end draws near, they realize that staying quiet wasn't kindness. It was avoidance. At the end of life, people don't regret being too bold. They regret letting others make the wrong decisions when their voice could have made a difference. That silence becomes a heavy burden, one they carry all the way to their final breath. Number 6, not taking better care of their health. George, 72, was admitted to hospice care after years of unmanaged heart disease and diabetes. He had always been energetic, the kind of man who laughed off concern, skipped checkups, and told everyone he'd be fine. He brushed off warnings from doctors, ignored symptoms, and figured a few bad habits wouldn't matter much in the long run. But in his final weeks, confined to bed and relying on others for everything, he turned to his daughter and said quietly, "I didn't think it would catch up with me this fast. I always thought I had more time." This regret is painfully common in end-of-life care. People don't expect the consequences of years of neglect to show up all at once, until their health collapses. They look back and realize how many chances they had to change course. The hardest part is knowing they didn't take any of them, and now the time to reverse it is gone. Number 7, not traveling or exploring while they could. Margaret, 80, was fading from complications of advanced breast cancer. For most of her adult life, she had dreamed of seeing the Grand Canyon, standing at the edge, breathing it in, watching the sun rise over something vast and quiet. But she never went. She waited for the perfect year, for someone to come with her. In her final days, confined to a hospice bed and barely able to sit up, she looked at her daughter and whispered, "I thought I'd have more time to see the world. I didn't think I'd be stuck in this bed before I turned 81. Hospice workers hear this kind of regret often. And it's not just about distant travel. People wish they'd gone to the ocean one more time, taken that road trip, visited an old friend. They rarely regret the trips they made. What haunts them are the ones they put off, the moments they planned for later, until later never came. Number 8, not letting themselves feel joy when it was safe to. Shirley, 78, had struggled with chronic stress and control her whole life. Even during holidays or quiet moments, she kept waiting for the next crisis. She couldn't relax, couldn't let her guard down. There was always something to worry about. In her final weeks after a sudden cancer diagnosis, she finally admitted, "I don't think I ever let myself be happy. I was always bracing for something to go wrong." Hospice nurses often hear this from people who realize they spent decades surviving, but never truly living. They weren't depressed. They weren't unhappy on the outside. But they never allowed themselves to feel calm, free, or content. And now they see just how much that stole from their life. The joy was always there. They just didn't feel safe enough to let it in. Number 9, not leaving a piece of themselves behind. Dennis, 80, had been a quiet, humble man, never one for journaling, storytelling, or saving photos. He kept most of his thoughts to himself, always assuming there'd be time later to share. But in his final weeks, as his heart failed and hospice care became his daily reality, he told one of the aides softly, "I wish I had written something down. My kids don't know who I was." This regret is deeply personal and surprisingly common. It's the quiet realization that after a lifetime of experience, memories, and wisdom, there's nothing left behind to show for it. As people face the end, they often wish they had passed on more than just money or possessions. They wish they had shared their stories, lessons, values, or even a letter to say what they never spoke aloud. The silence they leave behind becomes a second kind of loss, one that echoes in the lives of those they loved. If someone you love starts sharing these regrets, listen. It means they're trying to find peace before it's too late. Don't rush to fix it, just be present. And if you're the one reflecting, then let this be your wake-up call. Say what you've been holding in. Do what matters before time runs out.
And there you have it. What are your thoughts? Next, dive into this video for more essential tips to transform your health and help you thrive. You're going to love it. Thanks for watching Healthy End, and we'll see you there.